In the world of music, fame often shines like a dazzling light, bright, intoxicating, and seemingly endless. But as history has shown, behind the glow, shadows often lurk, shadows that can swallow even the brightest stars. Tonight, we dive deep into a story that shocked fans and critics alike. A story that begins not with crime, but with success. A young man from Jamaica who climbed his way into global stardom with hits that dominated the airwaves, only to later fall from grace in a spiral of fraud, deception, and ultimately prison. This is the story of Kizian Anderson, better known to the world as Sean Kingston, the rapper, the singer, the hitmaker who gave us beautiful music, and who, just years later, would find himself standing in a courtroom, facing the harsh reality of a federal prison sentence. But before the downfall came the rise. Sean Kingston was born in Miami, Florida, on February 3, 1990, to Jamaican parents. His childhood was split between Miami and Kingston, Jamaica, the city that would later inspire his stage name. His upbringing was far from easy. His father was absent, his mother spent time in prison for tax evasion, and young Sean faced struggles that most children should never have to endure. Yet, music was always there. His grandfather, Jack Ruby, was a legendary reggae producer. It was as if music flowed in his blood. And Sean wasn't just another kid with a dream. He had the charisma, the talent, and the determination to chase it relentlessly. Everywhere you went, radios blasted his music. MTV, BET, and international channels couldn't get enough. He was young, fresh, and unique, a Jamaican-American voice bridging cultures and blending genres. He had everything: fame, money, and the love of millions. But behind the applause and flashing lights, Sean Kingston's life was already building cracks. The sudden fame brought sudden fortune, and with fortune came temptation. The luxury cars, the mansions, the designer clothes, all became part of his world. But as many celebrities discover, wealth is not always endless. Behind the scenes, his spending far outpaced his earnings. Lavish purchases, poor financial management, and the pressure of maintaining a certain image began to weigh heavily on him. And then tragedy struck. In 2011, Sean Kingston was involved in a horrific jet ski accident in Miami. The crash was nearly fatal. He suffered broken bones, internal bleeding, and was hospitalized for weeks. Fans prayed for his recovery, and he eventually pulled through, but the accident changed him. Not only did it leave physical scars, but it also slowed down his career momentum. The industry had moved forward, with new stars rising, and Kingston found himself struggling to regain the spotlight he once owned so easily. Desperation began to creep in. The once flashy lifestyle didn't come with the same consistent income. The hits weren't charting as high, and behind closed doors, debt began piling up. Still, Sean Kingston continued to present himself as larger than life. On social media, he flaunted his jewelry, his cars, his mansions. He showed himself living the dream, but it was a dream that came with a dangerous secret. Because what the world didn't know, what his fans couldn't see, was that Sean Kingston's life was slipping into darker territory. The rapper who once sang about beautiful girls was about to become known for something far more sinister. Wire fraud, conspiracy, deception. The very lifestyle he flaunted was allegedly being fueled not by hits, not by music sales, but by elaborate scams. And soon, federal investigators would be watching. Because in the United States, crime may take time to catch up with you, but when it does, the fall is swift. Sean Kingston's story was about to take a chilling turn, and it would leave fans gasping as the star who once inspired millions faced handcuffs, courtrooms, and eventually, a prison sentence. Fame, it can be blinding. For Sean Kingston, the pressure to maintain the appearance of a superstar never went away, even when the hit records did. Behind the social media flexing, the glittering chains, the high-end cars, the designer clothes, there was a darker reality. The money wasn't flowing in the way it once did. Tours slowed down. Album sales shrank. Collaborations came and went, but none brought back the magic of 2007. And so, Kingston turned to a more dangerous way of keeping his empire afloat. According to prosecutors, Sean Kingston became involved in elaborate wire fraud scams that targeted jewelers, luxury goods providers, and even electronics dealers. He allegedly promised payments that never came. He used his celebrity status as a weapon of persuasion. After all, who would doubt the word of a famous rapper? Who would dare question a man with millions of followers online? But fraud leaves a trail. Reports suggest Kingston and his associates ordered expensive watches, luxury cars, high-end furniture, and electronics, and often never paid. Some businesses were left empty-handed, others with bounced checks. It wasn't just about lavish living, it was a carefully constructed image of wealth and power. An image Kingston clung to desperately, even as debt grew deeper. Victims began to speak out. Jewelers reported being duped out of tens of thousands of dollars. A furniture company claimed it was owed thousands more. And slowly, the pattern became undeniable. Authorities took notice. Federal investigators began piecing together a timeline of suspicious transactions, broken promises, and outright fraud. What they found painted a picture of a man living far beyond his means, financing his lifestyle not through music, but through deception. And Sean Kingston wasn't operating alone. At the heart of the scheme was not just the rapper, but also his mother, Janice Turner. Together, they became the focus of a federal case. Investigators alleged that Kingston and his mother conspired to defraud multiple businesses across state lines, making this more than just a civil dispute. This was federal crime territory, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and grand theft. In May of 2024, the facade came crashing down. The FBI, in coordination with Florida law enforcement, raided Kingston's rented mansion in Fort Lauderdale. Videos of the raids surfaced online, dozens of officers storming the property, seizing luxury cars, expensive jewelry, and electronics. The once flashy mansion, once a symbol of his supposed wealth, became the scene of his undoing. Sean Kingston was arrested. His mother was taken into custody. The news sent shockwaves across social media. Fans were stunned. Critics weren't surprised. And the entertainment world was left with one burning question. How did a star who once ruled the charts end up here? Court documents revealed that Kingston had engaged in a pattern of fraudulent behavior stretching years. The charges carried heavy penalties, decades in prison, if convicted on all counts. But as the case unfolded, it became clear Kingston wasn't going to beat the system. Prosecutors laid out their evidence in damning detail. Victims testified. Paper trails were undeniable. Checks bounced. Wires never cleared. And the pattern of lies became impossible to ignore. By late 2024, Kingston reached a plea agreement. He admitted guilt. The celebrity bravado, the confidence of a star, it all faded in the courtroom. Here, he was not Sean Kingston, the hitmaker. He was Kazan Anderson, the man who defrauded businesses, lied to partners, and manipulated his fame to get what he wanted. In 2025, the sentence came down. Sean Kingston was sentenced to 3.5 years in federal prison for wire fraud. His mother also faced charges in her own sentencing. And just like that, the curtain closed on a story that began with so much promise. A superstar who had everything, only to throw it away in a desperate attempt to hold onto the illusion of wealth and success. But the story doesn't end here, because behind every prison sentence is the lingering question, what comes next? For Sean Kingston, the road to redemption will not be paved with platinum records or Billboard hits. It will be paved with time behind bars, time reflecting on choices, and time wondering whether the world will ever forgive him. Once, he was the voice of summer, the soundtrack of teenage memories. Now, he's a cautionary tale, a reminder that fame can fade, money can vanish, and crime always catches up. And when it does, the fall is swift. Prison is a world unlike anything Sean Kingston had ever known. The man once surrounded by screaming fans, expensive jewelry, and million-dollar homes now found himself inside a cold, confined cell, where status and fame meant nothing. Gone were the flashy chains. Gone were the luxury cars. Gone was the army of yes men who once orbited around him. Inside, he was just another inmate, stripped of the identity he had built his life around. At first, it seemed impossible. How could a man who had once performed at sold-out arenas now spend his days confined behind concrete walls? But that's the brutal reality of federal prison, and no amount of celebrity could shield him from it. Reports suggest Kingston struggled to adjust. The food, the routines, the loss of freedom. It was a world designed to break down even the strongest spirits. And for someone used to adoration, the silence was deafening. But prison is also a place of reckoning. Behind bars, there's nothing left but time. Time to think, time to remember, time to regret. And Sean Kingston had plenty to reflect on. He thought about the early days, the songs that made him famous, the joy his music brought to millions, and the endless opportunities that came his way. He thought about his mother, now facing charges of her own, a co-conspirator in the fraud that brought them both down. And he thought about the victims, the jewelers, the businesses, the people he defrauded. People who trusted him, who believed in him, who lost thousands because of his lies. 3.5 years. To some, that may not sound like much. But for someone who lived his entire life in the spotlight, it was an eternity. So the question remained, could Sean Kingston ever make a comeback? History shows us that fallen celebrities sometimes reinvent themselves. Some find faith. Some find new careers. Some disappear entirely, never to return to the public eye. For Kingston, the road ahead was uncertain. Fans debated online. Some defended him, claiming he was misunderstood. Others condemned him, calling him greedy, irresponsible, and reckless. Social media became divided, but one thing was clear. Sean Kingston's reputation was shattered. Even after prison, the stain of fraud would follow him. Businesses would hesitate. Promoters would be cautious. And trust, the very thing he had weaponized, would be nearly impossible to earn back. If Sean Kingston ever hopes to reclaim even a shadow of the life he once had, it will take more than music. It will take accountability. It will take humility. And it will take time. Because in the end, this story isn't just about one man's fall from grace. It's about the dangers of chasing fame at all costs. It's about the illusion of wealth in an era where social media rewards the image, not the reality. And it's about what happens when deception replaces honesty, when greed replaces gratitude, when desperation replaces discipline. This is the story of Sean Kingston, an artist who once had the world at his feet, only to lose it all chasing an illusion. From chart-topping hits to federal prison, his journey reminds us that behind every glittering facade, there can be shadows. And sometimes those shadows consume everything.